I'm going to show you how to use AI agents to completely transform your customer service operations. So from handling feedback to crafting responses and generating detailed reports, these systems can automate what used to take hours. So this agent will be able to automatically respond to customer feedback and generate detailed reports with statistics and other relevant analytics to provide you with weekly reports so that you and your team are constantly informed. I wanted to preface that this is just a snippet of what's actually possible, and this can be so much more in depth with different actions that it can take and features that can be built on top of this, like responding to all your customer service emails. But for sake of this video, I wanted to keep it brief. But if you are a business owner looking to implement AI agents like this and other custom AI solutions into your company to increase your bottom line, check out the link below to apply to work with us. I'm also opening up 2 more slots to work directly one-on-one with me. So whether you want to start your own AI automation agency and land clients, automate your business, or just learn to build AI agents from scratch, I'll help you get from 0 to 1 client, whatever it may be, and achieve your goals. You'll also get full access to my resources, templates, and in-depth tutorials. So you can apply to join now using the link down below in the description. Now, really quick, before I give you guys a demo of this system, I want to show you just high level how it actually works and what's going on in the back end and what I really built here. So first off, we're starting off with a customer submitting something. So what we've done is we created a customer feedback. Now, this can be coming in a lot of different forms. So maybe your department is receiving emails from customers, always complaining about something, asking for refunds, or maybe you have a form submission on your website or somewhere else, whatever it may be. This is just one form that it can take. So we have questions like exact feedback. So it might be better if I go to the responses, but we have suggestions for improvement. We have their name, email. So if people are asking for refunds, it's always going to look different how you guys are collecting refund information and stuff like that. Likely, it's going to be an email. So that's just another possibility that you can take. So whether it's a form, whether it's an email, I just included those 2 because they're the most common. Anyways, all this data, it's going to be submitted and passed through to our agent. Now, this is when our system's actually going to start working. So this first agent is going to be the response handling. I'll get into what that kind of means in just a second. The first step we have here is analyzing the sentiment of the submission. So if somebody submits and they said, the feedback, it was great, happy to have you as a service provider, or maybe someone saying, I'm not too happy with the service, I'd like a refund. Well, the goal here is to determine what actions you should be taking. If they want a refund, you should probably escalate that into a ticket and ask for some more information, or just have your team notified, whatever it may be. So we're going to analyze the sentiment. So let's start off with the negative. Negative consists of, submissions containing like refund, cancel, I'm not happy with the service, any just negative connotations. From there, as soon as we determine that it is a negative sentiment, we're going to create a ticket in Zendesk or any other software. So I don't use Zendesk. I don't run an e-commerce company, so I don't actually employ this, but just an example. From there, we're going to immediately escalate to the customer support team. In this use case, we're going to send a Slack notification or just an email to notify the relevant parties, because in this case, we just want to notify someone to take care of this immediately. We don't want AI to handle it. There's a lot of things that AI should handle. And in this specific use case, this isn't to say that it can't handle this, because it most definitely can handle responses like this. But for the time being, we're just going to hand this off to an employee, a customer service agent, to deal with this. But what we can do with AI is we can automatically send an apology email. So we're sending to the customer, we have their email. So we're just going to automatically say, hey, I saw you were asking for a refund or whatever it may be. Here's an offer, a 20% off, and here's a free upgrade. This is going to be where you should include whatever's relevant to your particular company. But you kind of get the idea. We're just kind of handling and dancing around the refund. Of course, if it gets to that point, we can't offer a refund. So it really depends on what you're looking for there. Next up, we have the neutral and mixed sentiment. So this is going to be, let's say their response is, maybe I have one right here if I go back to the form. It doesn't look like we have a neutral response, but you kind of understand what I'm getting at. So if somebody's saying like the product was okay, it's not great, wasn't terrible, we're going to email a customer asking for additional details on how they can help based on their answers. From there, we're also going to try to upsell them. So we're going to offer them different products. We're going to offer them discounts and everything to just kind of lead them to a product purchase or service purchase. Lastly, we have the positive sentiment. This is where we are going to tag the feedback as as a testimonial. Then we're going to send this to the CRM, which we are going to later use for our marketing campaigns. And then lastly, we are similarly as before, just going to send a thank you email and also upsell them. So from here, all of these are kind of leading to returning back to the agent and storing all this information, all these logs in the CRM, where it will look something like this. This is obviously a very small scale, but we have our tickets here. We have the email, name, date added, and the type. Starting with the ticket, I'm not too happy with the service and need a refund. Here's the email, name, and then the type is just going to be negative, positive, or neutral. So of course, this is just for demo's sake, and this is a very small scale. So we have the feedback log right here. This is going to be everything that's coming in. Anytime somebody submits a form, this is where it's going to be inputted. Then we have the tickets. The tickets is what's going to be created if there's a negative sentiment that's analyzed. Let's just type out this name. Not like it really matters, but you can see here, I'm not too happy. To be honest, I need a refund. This one says, I'm not very happy and need help now. So this is where it's going to automatically notify a relevant party to reach out to them as soon as possible. Now, to give you a quick demo before we actually show off the backend system, I'm going to come into Google Forms. Let's actually make sure this is running. So I'm just going to test the workflow. And now I'm going to refresh this form. And the feedback type is going to be a question. And the feedback is, I am not too happy with the service you provided, and I want to speak to somebody for a refund ASAP. So suggestions for improvement, we'll just say, I wasn't impressed and I was misled. Okay, for the name, we'll just these parts don't really matter, so I'm just going to go ahead and submit it. Now in just 1 second, we should be getting notified within our Slack channel that's going to mention a new ticket created. So we could see here, new ticket is created, please handle ASAP. Here's the info about it. It says, I am not too happy with the service you provided, and I want to speak to somebody for a refund as soon as possible. Now, this is where it should take a lot of different shapes and forms. So you can automatically have AI call this person, the customer, and deal with them then and there. You can hand this off to somebody like I did myself. I handed it off to our Slack channel, which is hypothetically going to be filled with the customer service staff, and they'll be notified instantly. You could also send WhatsApp messages to them. You can send text messages or send emails to them. So this is where, like I mentioned, it'll take different shapes and forms. Next, what we're going to do is just check our CRM and see if this was populated. It looks like up at the top here, it says, as I inputted, I'm not very happy and I need help right now. So this is just analyzing the sentiment as negative, and it is now logged within our CRM. And we can see that it's also added right here. So this is perfect. It's everything that we needed. Now, quickly, I just wanted to show off the report that will be generated once a week. So if we come into N8N, we will see down at the bottom here, we're going to run this every Monday. So today's Sunday, so it's not going to run today. What we are going to do is we're just going to test this anyways. So I'm just going to run this from the beginning and we will see what I get. So I'm going to get the feedback, as you can see, from the past 7 days. I'm going to generate a report and notify the relevant parties. Now let's just head over to our Slack channel. As we can see right here, it just populated weekly feedback report. Here's the date range from 22nd of December to the 29th of December. The total feedback entries was 8. Sentiment summary, we have positive feedback is about 40%. So let's just review this really quick. We have 2 negatives, 3 positives, 4 positives, 5 positives actually, and 1 neutral. So let's go back into our Slack channel and let's check out the report and just make sure that it's accurate. So positive feedback, 40%. Key themes is customers praise the new user interface, swift customer support, and overall efficiency of the service. Neutral/mixed feedback, this is 25%. Key themes, you can see here, negative feedback is about 35%. And the key themes for this, it just says key issues include dissatisfaction with the recent price increase and technical glitches experienced during peak hours. Key statistics, it's providing the most common keywords and the insights and recommendations. So it's just giving me a couple different insights right here. Now you can personalize this to your company standards and whatever your guys' company really demands. So if you need more insights than this, then you can easily provide it with more, as long as you're prompting your agents correctly. But yeah, that's kind of the report and the high level picture of what we're doing here and what we're building. So next up, I just wanted to show you guys how you can actually build something out like this. Now to general oversight. We're going to be using this agent right here. We can consider this a whole nother agent right here, or just another workflow. And then we're going to use 3 separate workflows. So the negative, as I just showed you, this is the neutral, and then the positive. So these are all considered to be tools. So the tools are going to be hooked up to this agent right here. But before we dive any further into that, let's just start from the beginning and show you how we can build this out. So what I've done is, if you recall, I'm going to be using my input as Google Forms. This is where people are going to be submitting all the feedback. So instead of emails, we're just going to be using forms. Simple. So all I've done is I've just created a Google Forms on here. Now, if you do want to hook up a webhook to Google Forms, which is what you'll have to use to communicate with anytime somebody submits a response and to allow this agent to trigger, first, you have to set up a webhook within N8N. And how you do that is if you just search webhook right here and you just use the test URL, at least for the beginning. Once you're switching it to production, you'll obviously use production. What we do is we're just going to copy this webhook URL. Make sure you're setting this HTTP method as post if you are continuing to use the Google Forms. So how you actually enable this webhook, you'll have to come into this GitHub, and I will have this in the link down below in the description. But what you do is you just copy this link or this JSON right here, and we're just going to copy it into our script editor. So what I've done is I've just pasted this into here, and then you'll click run. Well, first you'll click save, and then you'll click run. I should probably mention that you have to input your webhook URL right here. So just put that right up at the top. It'll say input webhook or something like that. So you'll paste that in, then you click save and then run. Next up, you'll want to go into the triggers, and then you'll add a new trigger. The only thing you'll change here is to select event type, change that to on form submitted. So I'm not going to save this because I already have one included, but now every time somebody submits your form, it will run your webhook, and you'll be able to get the information from here. Next up, we're just going to be using an edit fields. So an edit fields, if you're not familiar, is just kind of setting the variables. So let's go ahead and click on a previous execution, and we'll be able to use this data. So if you're not familiar with using executions, this is just kind of something helpful that might be useful for you in the future. I'm going to copy this to the editor. So if we can see, I should have an output or an input right here. Let's see, we don't have anything in there. Oh, that's because we're running down here. So let's find one where we are using the top workflow. Find one that ran properly. Okay, this will be fine enough. So we can see that we have our input right here. Now, if we want to get that into our editor, all we have to do is just copy this to the editor. And then this will pin your data to the beginning. So this is mainly useful when you're testing your data or when you have to use different variables at the end of your workflows, whatever. So we're going to be setting in edit fields. So the edit fields is just going to allow us to pin our data. So from one of our submissions, we could see that the feedback type was questions. The feedback was, I'm not too happy with the service you provided, and I want to speak to somebody for a refund ASAP. And the suggestions for improvement was, I wasn't impressed and I was misled. Here we have the name, email, and everything else is kind of irrelevant. We're not going to have to focus on that. So to later reference, I'm just going to make it nice and clean. And that's why we're using an edit fields. So if I input feedback type, so I just typed out the name right there, and then I dragged over the feedback type. Now we're going to have a schema that's going to come up just as this right here. So we're not going to have to find webhook and go through all that and go through all the different bodies and parameters, whatever within there. We could just find it nicely organized within our schema. So that's why we're using edit fields. Next, arguably one of the more important parts of this build is a sentiment agent. So we don't really have to change anything here. I did change the variables. So instead of positive, neutral, negative, I just threw in mixed because sometimes there can be negative connotations and emotions within some of these messages. So I just included mixed for that specific case. Now we're going to have 3 different routes. It's going to be positive, neutral, and negative. We're passing this straight to an AI agent. This agent, it's not prompted anything special. It doesn't have to be. All we have to do is just make sure we're routing the tools properly. What we are doing is we're providing it with the previous sentiment analysis results. So whatever the sentiment agent is determining, whether it's positive, neutral, or negative. So it looks like in this example, it was negative. So we're going to be getting that negative input. So if I come over to the logs, we should see the input somewhere. Yeah, so here's the input, it's negative. Now, how we kind of continue that from here is we're going down this negative feedback loop or tool, I should call it. Let's move this over a little bit. Now, what I'm saying in the description is to call this tool if the input is negative. We don't have to get too in depth because these are very binary and easy terms to analyze. The workflow ID, I'll get into this in a second, and all these extra workflow inputs. Before I get into that, I wanted to dive into showing you guys these and showing you guys the actual separate workflows before I get into all this other stuff. So similarly to the negative feedback, we're just doing the same exact thing. We're providing a name for this neutral feedback tool. So call this tool if the input is neutral/mixed, and then it's just the same thing for the positive feedback. Okay, so that's kind of it for this main agent. As of right now, I'll get into the report later. Negative feedback. So this is a completely separate workflow. The first thing that we do here is an execute workflow trigger. Now, why we have to use this is because this is going to allow us to communicate with the previous agent. So we have to somehow call the separate workflows. It has to. It just doesn't work like magic. So we're going to be getting the inputs and everything from here. I'll explain how you get that in just a few minutes, or maybe it'd be best if I do it right now. So if I were to open this up, we could see that I have the query, I have the feedback, I have the name, suggested improvements, and email. But we don't just get that right off the bat when we first put this in here. What we have to do, so I'm just going to delete this and I'm going to grab another one. It shouldn't have pinned the data when I delete it, but we'll see. Okay, so now I'm going to connect this. We could see that I don't have any data in here. So I don't have any of the variables from these past workflows. So if I were to run everything else that's coming after this, it just wouldn't work. We can see we have the current date because that's not passed from the previous agent. But, the email, the feedback, the name, we don't have that because this is no longer selected properly. So how we can actually communicate with different workflows, if you haven't watched one of my last few videos going over how to communicate with different agents and separate workflows, we're going to dive back into this part. So first, we're going to just copy this workflow ID. So you get that from right up at the top. We copy that and we're just going to paste that in right in here. So we can see it's ERJC. So same exact thing. We can ignore this for the time being. Honestly, just always leave this as default. Never change this. What we are doing is we're including extra workflow inputs. So let me show you really quick. Is it going to let me without clicking on the garbage? Okay. So brand new one, extra workflow inputs. You're just adding values. It's relatively straightforward. So let's delete that. And let's open this back up. So what we're doing is if we go to the mapping instead of debugging, we should have these previous inputs, but for some reason it's not showing up right now. But anyways, we would normally see our schema on the left here of all of our mappings. So the feedback, all we're doing is we're grabbing the schema, we're dragging it in here. So that's why we kind of set the edit field, because it's easy for us to reference later on. So now all we're really doing is just going to the edit fields schema and just dragging over the feedback type. So this is kind of how you do it. You just drag it and drop it, dragging over the feedback, whatever. We're just doing that for right down here at these input for the workflow. So we're doing for the feedback, the name, the suggested improvements, and the email. So these are all going to be very particular to you and they're going to be changing. So they're not to really be focused on for this particular workflow. Okay. Now, if we were to run this, it will then provide us with an execution in here. So if we want to play with the data now, all we have to do is go to a previous execution. Hypothetically, that would be contingent on this being ran first. So maybe it'd be best if I just give you a quick little run through. So let me test this workflow. Let me run another submission. I might actually have to restart this. Let's see. Yeah, for some reason it's going all the way down. I'm not too sure why. Let's try clearing this data. So let's first unpin this. Now let's test the workflow and let's go into here and let's just submit this. So now it should be running. Okay, it's going to the negative feedback. So it should run successfully because I have already built it out, but I'll be showing you what it looks like in depth. Okay, so it didn't run properly. Maybe that's a good thing. So let's go into here, investigate what went wrong. So we can see that we have an error, one of the most recent executions. So it's just an error on the Google Sheets node, not a big deal. But we can see here that we now have our inputs that we plugged in from this little tool right here. So these extra workflow inputs, we now have all these variables and then we could communicate with different scenarios. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to, I'm just going to back up and I'm going to debug in the editor. Now, I believe this is just a paid plan thing. So if you have the default version or if you're running this locally, what you can do is you could just pin the data. So there will be like a button at the top when you're in the execution and allow you to pin the data, and then you'll get all your executions data right here. Okay, so now that we have that input in here, that's done with. One of the harder parts about building these agents and allowing them to communicate, we're just going to be inputting our tickets for the negative feedback. So we could see in here, if it's a negative ticket, it's just going to be plugged in to right here. So I'm going to go back. That's simple. We're just plugging in the email, the ticket, and the name. So the ticket was kind of the information that we're providing it. So I'm not too happy with the service you provided. I want to speak to somebody for a refund. Next up, we're sending a Slack message. So that Slack message is what I showed you at the beginning, where it is just sending information. So we're just doing a send operation, sending that to a channel, and the channel is Reprise. And then we're just inputting the ticket for some context. And moving on to the next one, this is the email writing. So one, it's really just going to be writing proper emails to any of the customers who are having issues. So I said, write a compassionate, empathetic email acknowledging the customer's concerns, thanking them for their honest input. So address, this is where I'm plugging in their name. So all I did, if I back up and I plug in the name right here, that's all I'm doing. Address Nick by name, only their first name and not the last name. I just provided you will sometimes have both first and last, and express a sincere willingness to improve based on their feedback. So feel free to copy that if you would like. But next up, we're going to be sending a Gmail module. Now, we're just going to be sending this to the email that it's coming in from. So the customer that submits this it's going to go to them. So we just drag that and drop that over to there. The subject, we're just going to say thank you for the feedback, and the message is the content from our ChatGPT. So if you do want to separate these pieces from ChatGPT, so the subject and the body, you just have to output this as JSON, and this will allow you to get two different variables that you can play with. Google Sheets, this is just going to be updating the actual tickets. So the overall feedback log, it's going to be updated. And lastly, we're just going to edit the field. So this is going to be response, and the value is going to be done. You'll always need something like this when you're finishing off a workflow, and this is going to tell your agent that it's done running and whether or not it worked. Actually, let's open that back up. If we see right here, field to return is response, and that's what this agent is looking for. So if you were to change this to not finished for whatever reason, you would have to match that right here and just say not finished, but I don't want to say that. So I'm going to put that back. Close that one out, and let's now go over the neutral. So the neutral, this is kind of just doing the same thing. I'm not going to go over the execute workflow. We're writing an email once again. So I write a compassionate email. I'll show you what I'm saying exactly. So I say at the bottom, as a token of appreciation for their time and to encourage continued communication, include a special 20% discount code for their next purchase. Reassure them that their insights are highly valued and instrumental in enhancing the services and products. Close the email warmly, inviting them to reply directly with the additional details. So once again, we're outputting this as JSON. We're sending off that email to the customer. We're then updating our Google Sheets with the ticket. So we're just saying whatever the context that they provided, and then we're editing the field again. For the positive route, doing pretty much exactly the same thing, except for the ChatGPT model, we're saying some things differently. So write a warm and appreciative email thanking the customer for their positive feedback and acknowledge their support. So I say close the email with a warm and inviting tone, thanking them again for their loyalty and support, and include a link or instructions for exploring the recommended products or services. So you can upsell them from here. Now that's the agent that's going to handle the response handling. So it's going to send off messages to the relevant parties to notify them if things need to be taken care of instantly and if the tickets are escalated to them. What we want to do next is work on creating this report. So what we do is we first have a schedule trigger. To find that, all you have to do is just search up schedule. It used to be called Chrome. So that might be what it's called now, or still. Yeah, so if you search Chrome, it's just schedule trigger. But within the schedule trigger, we just have the trigger rules as once this finally loads. The trigger interval is going to be weeks. The weeks between the triggers, I'm just going to do one. So I want this to send every single Monday. You could also have this run on Tuesdays, whatever it may be, and then you can have it trigger at specific hours. So I'm going to run this every Monday at 9 a.m. Next up, we're getting the feedback submitted from the past 7 days. And how we're doing that is one, I'm just finding the document. So I have this document listed as customer support. The tab we're looking for is feedback log. So I just routed those up. Now we have to aggregate the data. So if we don't aggregate the data, everything is going to be ran through one at a time. We want everything to be ran at once, not continuously looping through each one, providing a report on just one record and one feedback submission. So just find an aggregate node. All you have to do is just search aggregate. I'm not going to explain that. Then we're going to generate the report. And what I said here, it's quite long, so feel free to pause this and skim it. I will also have this system template within my new paid community, so you can get that there as well. But what I'm saying here is you're an AI assistant tasked with generating a weekly report based on customer feedback. So I ask it to get only the past 7 days. So to get the past 7 days, it has to have context of the current date, which we later provide, and I'll show you that in a second. So we have the introduction. So just provide a brief overview, the sentiment summary. So analyze the sentiment distribution, whether it's positive, neutral, negative, and represent them as percentages of the total feedback. Then we have key statistics and insights and recommendations. And then to focus only on feedback from the last 7 days, we have the sentiment summary, key statistics. So these are all just examples. And as I kind of preach every single video, if you want your agents and your prompting to go from a success rate of 80 to 90% to 97, 99%, provide your agents with examples. Examples are the golden thing you need to add. Actually, I'll back up really quick. So that message right there, that's a system role. This text right here, we're providing it with the user role. So the user role is usually where you're going to be using input, and the system is just kind of a system message, what it's really instructed on. Then I also say ensure the output never has a markdown format. So I guess I could test this out. It's going to run through the entire workflow. So we get something like this weekly feedback report. As you can see, it's not in markdown format because I described it or instructed it. Next up, we're just notifying the relevant parties. Now this part, it can get pretty interesting. So if you wanted to, you could create Google Docs, you could create Google Slides and make pitch decks. In that case, you would just take the variables, the content that's given from OpenAI right here, and just plug it into Google Docs, and it would create realistic and actually professional documents and reports instead of just sending a Slack message, which is, kind of a little more sloppy, but it gets the job done. And also this is just for demo's sake. If I were implementing this for a client, we would go the route of using Google Docs more than likely and provide templates within that. So what we're doing here, we're just sending the Slack message. We're providing it with the context from the message. So to do that, we just go to OpenAI, grab the content, drop it in, and that's what's giving us something like this. If we open up our Slack, that's what's giving us this feedback report right here. So total feedback entries is 8 and all this other stuff that it's including. But yeah, let's go back here. And I believe that's really everything that this kind of covers. We also send off an email. So I suppose I could show you an example of the email that we receive. So if I open up my Gmail account, and if I go to weekly feedback report, we see right here, we have the subject, weekly feedback report. Here's the date, the sentiment summary, and all of that. So this looks a little bit more professional. You know, we still have to remove this. If you don't want N8N to be listed in your emails, all you have to do is go to N8N. And if you append the data, so let's go back to Gmail. And down at the bottom right here, select an option to append N8N attribution. And then you'll just want to make sure that this is actually turned off. So that's really it. There's so many different use cases, and this is just one portion, one process that can be automated and streamlined in terms of the entire customer service and customer support operation. So there's so many different things that you can do within departments, particularly customer service. But I am going to be later uploading a video how to use agents within any department within your company. So stay on watch for that because I've been putting some work into it lately, and I'll have that out relatively soon. But yeah, I just wanted to give you guys some insights as to what you can do so you can implement this within your own company. You can sell this as a solution to other companies, maybe e-commerce companies, whatever. But anyways, yeah, so as I mentioned, this is just a snippet of what's actually possible, and this can be so much more in depth with different actions that it can take and features that can be built on top of this. So like responding to all your customer service emails, whatever. But if you are a business owner looking to implement AI agents and other custom AI solutions into your company to increase your bottom line, check out the link below to apply to work with us. Also, I'm opening up 2 more spots to work directly one-on-one with me. So whether you want to start your own AI automation agency and land clients, or if you want to automate your business and do everything yourself, or just to learn and build AI agents from scratch, I will help you achieve your goals through all of this. You'll also get full access to my resources, templates, and in-depth tutorials. So you can apply to join this new community using the link down below in the description. I'm only taking on 2 more people this month. Anyways, if you guys are interested in that, feel free to check it out. Otherwise, no big deal. And I will see you in the next video. Thanks, guys.